Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and since my last video I have made quite a trapping progress on a character. I'm up to something like level 88 or 89 on a Saboteur Trapper character. I took the template that I initially gave you guys for just some sort of trapper, a Saboteur with all kinds of random trapping nodes. Probably lightning based traps because they look like they were going to work the best, especially arc trap, but I really want to try out some of the new fizz traps and some fizz based trap scaling, and ultimately what I've landed upon is this guy. And I've been trying out a lot of explosive trap action, which is the little explosive charges on the ground that explode quite a lot, and for clear I've ended up using ethereal knives attached to cluster trap and the trap gem. The initial idea was to definitely try out seismic trap and explosive trap and see how the fizz based trapping playstyle could work out. Seismic trap itself overall just felt kinda meh. It was kind of inconsistent on how it would kill things. It has 3 charges and a pretty long cooldown time, so you'd have to spec pretty heavily into cooldown recovery just so that you can actually throw more of them and use it as more of a clear skill. So in the end I just basically dropped it and started running pure ethereal knives, but I have tried out plenty of other stuff like blade fall traps, which do work as well at a certain degree, but they kind of add upon the delay of traps and double down on the delay. Because you throw your traps and you got to wait for your skill to activate. If you throw your traps and wait for Bladefall to activate, it also has the sort of cast time coming from the sky, which means you have 2 little delays, and overall it just did not feel that good. And as well as that, it was complete screen rape with that many blade falls hitting off at once. Now you can see the trapping playstyle is quite different from many other character playstyles, and it's something I'm not really too much of a big fan of. You throw a bunch of traps, you wait a split second, and then all your damage comes in. And that does leave you quite vulnerable and exposed to a lot of monsters, a lot of content, and it doesn't look very fast either. So it suffers the same pitfall as a Essence Drain character, or maybe even a Scorching Ray character, in that it does not look like it maps very fast or clears very fast. Rest assured, it is actually pretty damn fast. By level 88, or almost 89 I think now, it's taken me like 19 hours to get this far, and I've been averaging 250 to close to 300 million an hour XP in the level 80s. It's actually been pretty damn fast for mapping because everything gets one shot, I basically never die, and the single target is completely crazy. So that leaves you with something that feels kinda really good at times, but kinda really bad at other times. Just the overall playstyle, as I said, of trappers themselves, the run, throw, wait, explode, and being vulnerable to things, I really don't enjoy that much. So I'd much rather be playing a character that I can control my own attacks of and have instant gratification. But on the other hand, the sheer amount of damage coming from traps and the setups you can have on certain bosses, certain obstacles, and current game mechanics means that you can obliterate endgame content and quite a lot of tough encounters. Like here we have the tier 14, I think, Red Elder, so basically the hardest Elder possible. And if you get your setups correct with your explosive traps, you just insta-gib everything that comes your way. This is just one little example of the Guardian, and it's not completely insta-gibbing, but before the actual phases, you can, for the most part, insta-gib just about every boss out there, I would think, with explosive trap, though I've currently only tried the Red Elders, and have not come across tier 16s yet. I do think I'm going to be taking him into Uber Elder later today, and you can see that I started this fight out with EK traps. They're not that impressive on single target, but they definitely clear pretty nicely, and then we have the explosive traps for all of our actual single target. Now you can see that the life total is pretty low, but I do have Mind Over Matter with plenty of mana unreserved there, and probably some potential more tankiness if you really need it, but I've opted mostly for damage. Once again, Red Elder, I started out with EK traps accidentally. It was pretty garbage, but then you get your explosive traps in and they do go to absolute work on these types of bosses. Quite a lot of damage there, but the most impressive part was this portal phase, basically insta-gibbing every single portal. Overall, it's probably going to be fairly damn competitive to arc traps that are quite popular, and arc traps will probably get you further as a clear rather than EK, but I want it to be a full fizz-based Trapper and Playstyle to convert all of my fizz or to scale all of my fizz into additional elemental damage. And if you want to play with arc traps, that's kind of up to you in this build. You probably could have lots of success there too, but I just didn't really want to make every single character using arc. Now, one of the benefits of playing a Trapper is, as you can see here, this is me against my Oooooooo lab. At this point, I was level 68, I think, with 2,500 life, and just finished my Merc lab. So Trappers do end up feeling like a really defensive class or defensive playstyle if you can make it that way. You can see I do still take plenty of damage, but an Uber lab killing character at like 2,500 life, level 60 with the gear I had available at that point is pretty good, I'd say. And then I basically started farming at Zeres from level 68 to 80 because well, you can insta-gib everything. I started out with like 30 of each resistance and 2,500 life, and that's when I did my first Deathless at Zeri run. And you can just see that trapping and explosive traps in particular are pretty ridiculous for these phased bosses, and it's kind of unfair. So it does leave you feeling really good, but then you kind of realize you're playing traps and it's not that good. So it's up to the individual, but for me, it's probably not my cup of tea. Now, I will, of course, go over my entire character for you guys so you can see how I built it and how I came to the conclusions in my offense, defense, and the process that I took to make this character. So initially, the passive tree I gave everyone and thought would be the best would be to go down here and get all these life nodes. And as well as that, it was more of a lightning-based tree. At this stage, it has come quite a long way to be something somewhat different. I don't end up getting that much life. I've only got 130% life on the tree. I do take mind over matter with a bunch of extra mana here, a bit of extra mana there, and some mana there. And I do also get acro and phase acro, which I didn't previously have in the build setup. But this is just how things work when you make a build. You see what you end up needing and you adjust accordingly. And ultimately, I didn't really like the use of points over here and getting enough life while wearing some of the gear that I'm wearing. Looking at you, Tabular, and dual wield wasn't going to be that easy, and I thought in the end mind over matter just made a bit more sense for the defensive purposes of the character. So we do grab plenty of crit, plenty of trap nodes, but end up grabbing a few more nifty things like acro, phase acro, and mind over matter with mana. And initially I'm pretty sure I would have recommended you get Born in the Shadows, and I probably do still absolutely recommend it. It's an insanely strong passive, especially if you're out there mapping quite a lot and want to feel good about the trapping playstyle where a lot of things are going to hit you before you get a chance to do anything. It's a very strong defensive node. I had it for a bit. I took it out because I wanted to see if I could get all of my extra area happening from Explosives Expert, and I just feel better about that. And I've been living without it just fine, so I decided to, you know, not take it permanently. But just straight up, it should be a lot stronger for your overall trapping playstyle. If you think you can live without it, then by all means jump into some Explosive Expert with me, but just bear in mind this is a very strong node and should help your defenses out a lot as a trapper, so keep that in mind when dropping it. It should be quite a lot of extra survivability if you feel like you need it. But besides that, I do have the acro, the phase acro, a little bit of dodge otherwise, not too much, or evasion rather, and I've also got a bit more spell dodge coming from my boots. Boots like these are pretty easy to get, additional dodge to attacks or to spells, some movement speed and some life. I got these without the cold res for like 8 chaos, and then I exalted the cold res, and then I crafted the lightning res on, and now they're a really nice pair of boots. But just bear in mind that the dodge spell and dodge regular attacks as a prefix from the temple is a pretty damn strong additional modifier to your boots, and it's not too expensive to get, so look out for those types of boots. I think they're pretty worth using in these types of characters that could use the extra bit of defense. Now, my entire character is kind of revolving around this Tabular, which is +2 AoE, +2 trap. Bought it for about an Exalt. There's plenty of Tabular combos out there that can get pretty crazy. I bought this one for an Exalt so that my explosive trap could end up being really beefy. Currently, it's level 19. In most of the clips you see, it's anywhere from level 16 to 19, so still 2 levels away from at its absolute best. It's at roughly, let's have a look, 75,000 damage per hit per trap. So that's with the tabula. Technically, if you have no tabula, you're looking at something like 65,000 per hit. Still quite a lot. But if I completely min-max my character in the end and get the level 21 gem with the tabula, looking at 88,000. So it's quite a large increase to sacrifice all of your defenses and only focus on the AoE and trap gems for your tabula here. Unfortunately, it means that only your explosive trap is getting any benefit here. My EK trap, or Ethereal Knives trap, is sitting in my gloves, and thus my tabula does nothing for it. So if you'd rather use a Tinker skin, a Belly of the Beast, just for, defensive, a Shaper chest with spell crit, plenty of choices out there, then you dual benefit your character as well as both of your traps. But I wanted to grab this because it looked pretty damn fun for min-maxing damage, and we'll see how far I can push explosive trap damage through this thing. As well as that, I've got a Helm enchant that gives 2 additional smaller explosions. So currently explosive trap has 8 smaller explosions, being level 21 or higher. 2 additional means straight up 25% more damage if all of your explosive explosions are hitting, and they kind of sometimes are. It's tough to really judge the overlap on a lot of bosses, but that's what it looks like without almost any area and without any area nodes. So I ended up unspecking those because they didn't seem too necessary. Initially, I wanted to make explosive trap my primary clear skill, so I used all the area I could, all of it. Too much area, and still not good enough for a clear skill. It just felt kind of wonky. So in the end, I did run Ethereal Knives, managed to craft these gloves that have level 20 trap and then throws an additional trap as a modifier. So that's a single shaped mod on a pair of gloves, and that means instead of throwing 4 traps, I'm going to be throwing 5 traps all of the time, which is a pretty large increase in your output for trapping, and that's a pretty nice pair of gloves to go for. So then it ends up being a 5 length for my Ethereal Knives, which has Pierce, Cluster Traps, Ethereal Knives, Trap and Mind Damage support, and ultimately, if you really like your EK traps, you should probably grab the 2 additional proj here, drop the Pierce node, and run faster proj most likely, but you could also run Fizz to Lightning or just another damage multiplier, but the Pierce node or gem here doesn't feel that good. It's probably going to be better off to do that, but I've been running no faster proj and just Pierce, and it seems to work out fine. If you do this quite a lot, then you probably want to run faster proj because it should help your clear speed quite a little bit. Now, to get into the nuance of the character, how we've actually built it, you do have explosive trap, which starts out with a lot of fizz and then has 50% of it straight up converted into fire. So you're left with 50 fizz and 50 fire. In the end, I wanted to go 100% conversion, so I then grabbed Fizz to Lightning support here, and that means my explosive trap deals no physical at all, and now has a lot of cold, fire, and lightning. So I then have Wise Oak triple balanced, which gives me 15% penetration across the board to all of my elements. You then have this one over here for 10% pen, and this one over here for 10% pen. So in the end, good 35% pen is pretty damn nice for all your elements, and we scale a lot of additional physical from a foil and another foil. So I crafted both of these shaped foils. Doesn't have to be a foil, could be a dagger, could be a scepter, but foils just seemed nicest for the crit multi, as well as that for the whirling blades. So you have to have at least one sword or dagger so you can whirling blade around. You're trying to get these extra physical as cold or fire mods. Managed to chaos spam this one, which has both mods, a little bit of extra penetration, and then ultimately a lot of extra crit multi. So my explosive trap itself has a ball sack load of crit multi, 560. I'm at 49 crit, and it's pretty reliable big damage. The link I've been running are explosive trap, trap and mine, cluster traps, crit strikes, Ellie focus, and fizz to lightning. A lot of the time I was running increased area instead, play around with a few links, but I think that's my ultimate 6 link right there. And as I mentioned, that is a lot of damage. In the absolute tippity top, we're probably going to be about 88 average. Now that's average per hit per explosion. So if my explosive trap causes 10 explosions, each trap's pulling out 800k damage, and I'm throwing 20 traps before a boss starts, you can do the math there, and it ends up being something like 4 billion damage, and it's just pretty crazy. So trapping, pretty unethical, pretty unfair, and just sort of an end game content destroyer. Hopefully I can take this through to Uber Elder without too many strict requirements, and it'd be pretty silly. Lastly, I'll mention just I'm running Herald of Ash and Clarity here on my reservation, and as well as that, your defensive setup is something that really helps you quite a lot in the trapping lifestyle. So I have increased duration, siphoning trap, and bear trap. Those are sort of situational traps that you throw whenever you need to. And cast and damage taken, immortal call, increased duration, and enfeeble as a cast and damage taken setup is very strong to prevent a lot of damage that's going to be coming at you. So make sure you're using some sort of cast and damage taken. Doesn't have to be this one. Ultimately, I really would have liked a Blasphemy Temp Chains, but I just can't really justify it. And as well as that, I've also got Clarity Herald of Ash here. And I think over here for a red socket, I'm probably going to grab a Decoy Totem or an Enduring Cry. Decoy Totem, I think, should help me out more. And lastly, a Stone Golem. There's quite a lot to say, and I could keep talking about trappers all day long because there's a lot of sort of variability, variety there. You could trap just about anything onto your glove support here. I think arc traps, as a very common one, are probably going to give you the strongest clear speed and maybe the best feel for the character, but I really didn't want to just throw arc into everything like a lot of people have already done for these trapping things. So try out arc if you want to do that. The setup would be the exact same. You'd probably just ditch pierce and put lightning pen instead, and then you can still use explosive trap for your single target because it's pretty silly, and I think rather a little bit underrated at the moment. I'd say that's all I'm going to do for now. Hopefully I'll have another video on this character in the next few days if I've taken down Uber Elder. Maybe just if I've done Shaper or if I obliterate some of that. But hopefully it's going to be an Uber Elder killer, and we'll see how we go. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.